Excuse me. I shouldn't have opened with the belch. That's my big closer. 2, 3, 4. Do 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 do. Razzmatazz sassasoo. Steedy boppy bop bop boo. It's Wednesday, motherfucker. So, as of this morning, I finally caught up on all my funny books to read. And since, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but since this is the 5th Wednesday of the month, it was a very light week. And I think also kind of around Thanksgiving, I want to say it's traditionally kind of, everything kind of slows down. Like Christmas week is usually a pretty light week too. But I still got a couple funny books. I think I got a total of 9, which is less than half of what I usually get. And most of them were Marvel books. Plucky upstart publisher of Marvel Comics. So first up, Avengers Assemble Alpha #1. Because why not make it truly alphanumeric? They started giving books Alpha and Omega because it was, I don't know. It seems like it was a way to, when the 80s, I've watched a few of these and I see myself doing that a lot. I have to start over. It's also how I date. In the 80s, limited series were popular. Like Secret Wars was a miniseries, a limited series. That's what Marvel always called them. It'd be across the top of every issue. #1 in a 6-issue limited series. #2 in a blah, blah, blah. And that was good enough. I don't know why. But maybe, as time marches on, they have to try to figure out different ways to get people into this crap. It's never enough, is it? It's always there. It's always got to be more. It's not enough that I'm buying, 3 X-Men books. Why not 9? Or 2 Avengers books, now 3. So I didn't mean it just bothers me because it started out Alpha and Omega as the numbers. But then they put a #1 on here too, and it's like, you can't be Alpha and #1. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous, I say. Anyway, this is the beginning of the end of Jason Aaron's run. Jason Aaron has been writing the Avengers for about 5-6 years now, I want to say. Maybe not quite that long. A while, though. He's like, his run is into the 60s, so that has to be at least 5 years. So that's gonna... He's got that. He's writing Avengers Forever, which is the second Avengers title. And then Avengers Assemble probably won't be longer than this Alpha. And then there'll be an Omega, and then that'll be that. So the storyline in the Avengers lately has mostly focused on the multiversal Masters of Evil, who are several of the baddest ass characters. This is something that Jason Aaron has always done really well, is to take all kinds of bits and parts of the Marvel Universe and smash them together and creates new characters that way, which I don't think is smart, but it's good reading. I can say that much for free. So you have and they're all from different universes. So there's one where Killmonger is not only king of Wakanda, but he also possesses the Asgardian destroyer armor. There's one where Dark Phoenix, took over her planet, and she's got Wolverine on a leash, literally and not just metaphorically. Kid Thanos, the Ghost Goblin, which is Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin, also as the Ghost Rider. It's all kinds of goofy stuff like that. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Aaron's always been super good at that. Warren Ellis is really good at it too. It's a thing I don't see often enough. So while the Avengers have been putzing around with the X-Men and the Eternals with Judgment Day, Robbie Reyes, who was the most recent Ghost Rider, who was the Ghost Rider they created about 10 years ago, he has become the All-Rider. So he has been traversing the multiverse, trying to enlist Avengers from other universes to fight the multiversal Masters of Evil. So they had an issue where there was like 10 Captain Americas and there's a Captain Marvel, the Carol Corps, I think they call it. And it's so good. And so now it's all coming to a head. Now that the Avengers are done with Judgment Day, they can join up with the battle. So here you've got, oh boy, yeah, this is some of the. I want to say it's some of the. All right, and then there's also the Avengers from 1 million BC. So you have this is Agamotto himself, if I'm not mistaken. The first Iron Fist here is a lady. If I'm not much mistaken, this is the Tony Stark from a different universe where he's Ant Man. I just can't get enough of all this goofy crap. And it's drawn by Brian Hitch, which is not a coup exactly, but a big deal. Brian Hitch worked a lot with Mark Millar. I believe he drew Civil War. Is that right? Yeah. No, the Ultimates. That was his thing. I think he might have drawn Civil War too, though. Now that I'm thinking about it, I remember that was a thing though because Civil War kept coming out late, and Brian Hitch kept getting very defensive about it. Whatever. So yeah, this is their. This is like they're gonna, have the big wrap up, and why not start off with an overpriced, oversized issue? Well, it's not over. It's $6, but it is a bigger issue. Then also this week, I've got Planet Hulk World Breaker #1. This is a return of Greg Pak. You might be familiar with the planet Sakaar. Was featured heavily in the 2017 film Thor Ragnarok. And the Planet Hulk storyline is like what you see in Ragnarok is kind of like a brief if you walk past a window as Planet Hulk is going on, you're like, oh, okay. That's basically what you got. Like, Hulk was fighting as a gladiator on the planet Sakaar. That's about it, though. He wore that cool, Marvin the Martian helmet too. But it was obviously a much more Hulk-centric story. The whole reason it even came about was, speaking of Civil War, was this was in 06 or 07, whenever Civil War was happening. And this is just an educated guess that I made on my own, but the Civil War was basically Team Captain America, Team Iron Man, and they were fighting over superhero registration. And Thor was still dead at the time, and the Hulk they had to get rid of the Hulk, right? With guys like Hulk and Thor, who are like two of the biggest, strongest heroes on Earth 616, couldn't really have much of a civil war with one or the other taken aside, unless they took opposite sides. I don't know. So they didn't have to write Thor out because they already done that a few years previous. They had to get rid of the Hulk. So this was actually where I believe the Illuminati first was created. I don't think it was by Greg Pak, though. It might have been by Danny Way, in fact. But regardless, the Illuminati, who that team name was getting thrown around quite a bit earlier this year because a version of the Illuminati make an appearance in the Doctor Strange multiverse movie. Everybody's gaga for multiverses these days, and I can't get enough of it. I've always been a big fan. Alternate histories and shit like that, time travel and stuff, which is, in the same ballpark. So yeah, I mean, if this is going to be one of those things that everybody's into, as long as it doesn't get like when everybody's into zombies and I get sick of it. But so far, so good. Anyway, the Illuminati were, let's see if I can remember, Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man, Professor X, Black Bolt, Doctor Strange. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the original Illuminati. And so they were the 5 biggest, you know what I mean? Like, Black Bolt's the king of the Inhumans, and Mr. Fantastic is this, I think, officially the smartest man in the Marvel universe. Iron Man is Iron Man. Tony Stark's a multi-millionaire arms dealer. Professor X is the head of the X-Men, etc., etc. So these are the guys behind the guys who can make the moves behind the curtain. And one of the moves they made was to get rid of the Hulk. Not because of the Civil War. This is, like I say, right before Civil War. That's an editorial decision that I'm just assuming. But they got the Hulk together. They got together with the Hulk, and they were like, Bruce, buddy, could you go up to the moon and destroy this SHIELD satellite before it destroys the Earth, and he was like, "I guess I'll get you assholes out of another thing." But whoopsie doodle, they played a trick on, and they sent him the satellite that they had sent him to destroy was in fact a ship that he could not control, that they were controlling, and they were like, "We found you a very nice, peaceful planet, uninhabited. You'll be left alone finally, which is what you've always wanted." And the Hulk was not pleased. Actually, as it turns out, he was actually rather upset about this whole turn of events. But as normally happens, something went screwy, and the Hulk ended up on planet Sakaar, and he found himself in the middle. Like, he was the gladiator thing for a while, and then he and a bunch like Korg, who was also in Ragnarok, and a few other Meek, who was also in Ragnarok, and a couple other characters they glossed over. They kind of team up, and they overthrow the dictator, and Hulk becomes king. And there's like all this shit on Sakaar. They have this prophecy that a big green guy will show up and either save everybody, or will he in fact be the world breaker? So I don't want to ruin Planet Hulk if you haven't read it. It's a great storyline. That was when so Peter David had come back to write the Hulk. Bruce Jones wrote the Hulk for a long time, and then Peter David came back, and he had written it a lot in the 80s and 90s. And then there was like a 2-issue like connecting arc with all this stuff that I'm telling you now, getting rid of the Hulk, which was written by Daniel Way, who at the time was definitely one of my favorite writers. And I think actually that was why I started. I hadn't read the Hulk in a while at that point, but when Way started writing it, I was like, oh great! It would only turn out to be for 2 issues. But then Greg Pak took over with the Planet Hulk, and that was all him. And that was what made me like Greg Pak as a writer. Great, incredible writer. So now he's revisiting this. This is apparently 1,000 years into the future. And he's got his cool Marvin the Martian hat on. This little scrub brush. And yeah, he also had a son on Sakaar named Scar, just so I guess they would remember. That's, when you have a kid, you make it an anagram of the planet he was born on, his name. That's exactly what it is. Oh, comic books are so stupid. So anyway, little thumbnail Planet Hulk for you. You're welcome. Now at your next cocktail party, when somebody's like, "Hey, can anybody synopsize the Planet Hulk storyline from right around when Civil War was? I think it was 06." And you'll be like, "Oh, as a matter of fact, I can't." Whatever. All right, picks of last week. Last week I read Yoda #1. This is great fun. And this is pretty much exactly what I expected. It's a flashback sort of to the days of the Republic before the Galactic Civil War. And this civilization out on a distant planet puts out, they're under attack by, mean guys. Aliens from planet Mean Guy. And so they send up a rescue flare, and the Jedi Council. I don't know if you saw the prequels. I don't know if you knew they made those. But a lot of what the Jedi Council did is sit on their fucking asses in that little chamber they have. And they're like, nah, we're not going to get involved. But Yoda, which is, as I remember from the movies, was like, well, I will get involved. Of course he says involved, I will get. I hate talking like Yoda. It sounds so stupid. And in fact, in the prequels, it always sounded to me like, he didn't talk like that in every sentence. Every sentence, the verb and noun were not transposed. It was enough that you would notice, but in the prequels, it was like he was always doing. One thing that he did do in this that he does do in the prequels that I also love is where it's so stupid, but he never takes his lightsaber out of his belt. He little Jedi thing, and it goes into his. He doesn't even look at it. That's how badass Yoda is. It's so ridiculous. How much time could that possibly save Yoda when he's about to go into a lightsaber battle? And he's teensy on top of that. It's not like it's not like he's 9 feet tall and he's got to reach. His waist is right there. Nope. He's gonna do that. Hey, fucking Yoda, you can do whatever he wants. Sorry for all the swearing. Also this week, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World #1. This is great fun. Also, I mean, I don't mean to damn it with faint praise, nor the Yoda book, but it was about what I expected. It's a romantic comedy of a sort that takes place during the apocalypse. So we see our star-crossed lovers meet for the first time, and then at the end, little P.S. to fast forward to the future, the even further future, and things are going to get a bit hairy, believe it or not. So yeah, I hope this is an indication, since Jason Aaron is wrapping up the Avengers, that he's going to go back to doing more stuff like this, because it has been. I mean, he never quit doing indie stuff entirely. This whole time, he's been a tentpole writer over at Marvel now for God, at least 10 years. Yeah, about 10 years. I'd say that's about right. He did, like, I think I mentioned this before. Yeah, I went into this before. Never mind. And then finally, this is probably the best thing. Doctor Strange, Fall Sunrise, #1. To be honest with you, I don't remember the story at all, and even flipping through it, I couldn't remember it. But it doesn't matter, because it's Tradd Moore's artwork is what's on display here. Not to, again, damn his writing with faint praise, but when you have, that's not very good. It doesn't show up on the computer very well. Yeah, this is Tradd Moore is obviously, I mean, you can't draw Doctor Strange without drawing on a Steve Ditko influence, because he was the original artist, and he really set the aesthetic. He, the dark dimension and all that stuff, that was all his design, and they've never strayed from it, because it's great. But there's also what I didn't really notice until I was looking at it just now. There's probably more of a P. Craig Russell influence on Tradd Moore in general. P. Craig Russell doesn't do a whole lot. He's always been one of those artists that I believe is not super prolific, because he takes his time quite a bit. But he had a very Art Nouveau sort of thing going for him. And he also drew a really good Doctor Strange story. It was like a one shot. It might have been, it might have been like a 2-issue arc, and then they collected it as a prestige one shot. But it was called What Is It That Troubles You, Stephen? And it was so good, because I bought it around, I want to say like 96 or so, 97 maybe. And the young lady that I was dating at the time, not much of a reader, as it turns out. Not super into the reading. And she certainly didn't care about comic books at all, but she got a glimpse of that book, and she was like, and I think I gave it to her, in fact. She was so into it. It didn't burgeon into she just really liked P. Craig Russell, I think, and his artwork. And I can't blame her. He's really, really good. I believe he drew issue 50 of Sandman, and he also, for years, I had a Sandman t-shirt that he had drawn. So yeah, I see a lot of that in Tradd Moore, and that's a great combo. Tradd Moore is already a good artist on his own, but then when you see pieces of Ditko and Russell in there with him, it's a pretty thing, and that's the sort of thing that I enjoy. Which is why I read funny books. I can't, when I look over there, you can't see it, but when my stack was, it's gone now. I thought I was going to get it all knocked out on Thursday. I got like a week and a half. I was like 5 weeks behind. So I spent a good chunk of Thanksgiving, and then I spent a good chunk of Sunday and Monday that I had off. And then I still, yesterday morning before I left, I read a few more. And then this morning, I finally knocked them all out. And it sounds really stupid. I understand that, but it's really filled me with a sense of accomplishment. I feel like I can do anything now, as long as that only includes reading comic books. You got something better to do? I'll save you the trouble. No, you don't. All right. Okay, bye.